Right, so this is our last week on this particular project, the watercolour project, and my suggestion for this week is perhaps have a go at drawing and painting some objects. So it could be anything that's an object. Okay. Your paintbrushes, the cups out of the kitchen, or a few bits there, or anything you've brought along with you, and you'll all have something, right? So that's the suggestion for today. Last week, I was suggesting we perhaps have a go at a little landscape and apply some of the techniques that we've used so far or learned so far. And this week is very much the same sort of thing, just using those basic techniques but applied to observation of objects. Our next project is still life anyway, so that's the project for April. So if you wanted to have a go at painting a still life, the great thing about still life is you're working from direct observation. We haven't got to rely on photographs. And it's a great way of getting you used to just observing the world firsthand rather than relying on photos and tracing and things like that. So that if you fancy that next week, that will be our project for the next month. Okay. It's also an opportunity for me to go through some of the basic drawing techniques as well, which would be good for still life. So that's that. Some of you may be still finishing off from last week, so that was, as I say, we were working on the landscapes last week, so I'll move that out of the way. The other thing is, I've also brought some books in, so if you didn't want to work on still life, there's a few, this one I've photocopied a few examples of other artists' watercolours. And I think when you're learning watercolour, sometimes it's quite a good way to work is to practice from paintings rather than practice from photographs. Because I think with photographs there's a tendency when we're first learning to want to put every single detail in. And by looking at other artists' watercolours, you can see how an artist has simplified the scene and how they've used the watercolour to give an impression of the scene rather than photographic detail. Okay. The other thing I brought in, so that's that folder there, if anybody else practices those. The other thing I brought in is a whole selection of watercolour books. So these are all different artists I quite like, and they're all quite different, well, they're fairly different in style, but I think they're all good examples of watercolour technique. So if you wanted to have a look at any of these, just have a look at them through the session. Some of the, like this one's got a few stages, it's more of an instructional book, so it shows you the stages he's gone through, losing bits. So yeah, they're there if you want to have a look. And I think it's quite, again, good to look at examples of good watercolours rather than look at photographs. So they're there if you want to have a look at any of those. Right, so in terms of this particular project, what I'm suggesting is just individual studies of different objects. So I've drawn out a mushroom and a pear, two separate things. And it's going to benefit me working on two things at once, not in the same painting. But while one bit is drying, I can then go on to the other one. So I'm not going to have to keep to and fro to the hairdryer. So in terms of the drawing, with the mushroom, I just started with this bit in the middle. I found that was a good place to start. And then just worked my way around that shape. And I looked at how close this edge was to the middle bit, how close that edge was. So I basically drew that inner bit there. And then I worked out, how much I'm seeing with the outer edge. So that's how I went about the drawing. The pear is pretty similar. I think I started here, just worked my way around the shape. So with this one, it's also a good idea to have, as I was saying previously, have a bit of scrap paper to try new colours out. I'm thinking these two colours are going to be the sorts of colours I need for this outer section here. And they're not too dissimilar to the inner section actually. The inner bit is just a little bit darker. So actually, hang on, start with the middle bit and just try this out here first. So I think that should be right. Maybe a little bit of blue with that. And really, I mix that with whatever was left in the palette and a little bit of brown and a little bit blue. So that's what I've come up with there. And just want to check that. So some of the very light bits there, I quite like. I don't want that to get get too dark in the middle. I don't want it all to get very dark. So I'll work that into that section. And this way so you can see what I'm doing. And it's a, actually probably what would have been best is to do the lighter bits first, thinking about it. Too late now. So just work that in. All the little lines I'm going to ignore for the time being. The textures will go on later. And then just under the edge here, it's slightly darker, so I just want to mix a slightly darker version. So we just add a little bit of brown and a little bit of blue to get a nice dark. And while that's still wet, hopefully that will just soften out and get some nice, get some nice sort of shadowy areas. But I need to work that in quite quickly because as soon as, that bit there is already starting to dry. So that's really as far as I can go with that one. The middle bit, actually, because this is drying so quickly, I probably could paint a little bit in the middle there. So it's going to be a similar sort of colour. And I'll just put one wash over there to start with. And while it's still wet, there's a little bit of shadow on this side. That's probably about as far as I will go with that in a minute. Okay, so that would be that bit. Let that dry, and then I'll come back and do this out a bit. And then probably after that, I would then pop the shadow in. And I'll do a little bit on the pear. We've got an idea of that, because I've actually got a pear demo that I found in my sort of example was kind of the different stages. So I'll do this stage first, and we can have a bit of that onto this. So I need to just mix a nice kind of green. So some yellow and blue to mix a green. Some of you might have greens already that you want to just alter with the yellows and blues and get them a little bit closer to them. So I think this looks a bit like a cadmium yellow light and then some cerulean blue. And let's get a nice blue sharp green. I can mix a reasonable amount of that because there's a shadow side to that as well. So I tend to just use like an old children's brush just to get the paint out, and then sometimes it dries up a little bit over the last couple of days. I'm not painting a couple of days using these colours. Right, so I've got a couple of greens mixed there, slightly dark and slightly lighter. Now I need to just make that a little bit wetter so that it flows like a watercolour. So that should be okay for that. And then I can pop that on there like that. Just work that in nice and quickly. As I say, it's quite warm in here this morning, so the paint's drying quite quickly. I don't want to make that too wet because I've already got my painting wet. So this bit can be like the shadow area. So we're working wet and wet. So a bit like when we do the sunset paintings. You've got some wet paint there, and you're very quickly just working anywhere where you can see shadow. Like that. And I can just see a little bit of highlight just in the middle there. So just dry this brush off and just see if I can lift out with a dry brush, lift a little bit of highlight out like that. So again, you've got to work quite quickly to be able to do that, and then best to just leave that then. Okay, don't let that dry. The next stage will be just trying to get some of this sort of suggestion of the texture on the pear, which some fruit that will apply to. I think, so I've already got a shadow there, so it's good to get shadow. Turn that around, make it look a bit more like the pear. So it's really just a browner. So green, so I'll add a little bit more red to what I've got. And not too big a brush. Use that to just follow the kind of marks I'm seeing there. Some bits are quite solid, so I don't want to. So I kind of want to get this paint on, you know, one go while it's still wet. Just a few kind of dots and dashes. Not too strong, just enough to suggest a little bit of texture there. And then that's pretty much it, just the stalk to go in. Just a little bit darker, a bit blue and brown mixed together, darker brown. And that's, well, this coat, I've already actually drawn it there, so I'll put it in there. And you might find, let's turn that around, yeah. Probably going to have a little bit of shadow cast just under here. Maybe that's a tiny bit clearer. And I suggest maybe painting these on a sheet of white paper. Because if you've got a colour, obviously you've got to make the colour go all the way around. Whereas if you just get a sheet of white paper, put the objects on white, just make it easy for yourself. It's hard enough as it is, so try and make it as easy as you can to start with, and then we can go from there. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so it's really just kind of more practice, but applying what we've learned to other subjects. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.